Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. This is JP Gaming UK and today I'm going to be doing my first ever review for an episode of Star Trek Picard. Um, if you have been a member of my channel for a while, you'll know that I had to take all of my Star Trek Picard videos down the other day because they contain copyright and I weren't going to do any more Star Trek videos, but I've decided to do something different. I've been doing a little bit of research on how to do reviews and stuff. So this is going to be my first ever review on the latest episode. So if this isn't as up to par as all the other reviewers out there, I do apologize. I will get better in time, but this is my first ever one. So I hope you enjoy this. I'm doing this so I don't break any copyright laws or anything. And I can still share some Star Trek content on my channel. Before we start this video, though, I'm going to say this has to be the best episode of Star Trek Picard or Star Trek in general I have seen in a long time. This episode was fantastic from start to finish. Loved every minute of it. But this is going to be a completely this is going to be a spoiler review for episode 6 of Star Trek Picard, season 3, episode 6 of Star Trek Picard, called The Bounty. And there's a reason why it's called The Bounty, which we'll get to later on in this review. But I've got all my notes written down in front of me, so if I sound like a robot, it's because I'm reading off my notes, because a lot happened in this episode. And when I mean a lot happened in this episode. But like I said, this episode has to be one of the best episodes I've seen in a long time. And something in it which warmed my heart so much. It was so nice to see, but we'll get to that later. Anyway, if you're new to my channel, I'm normally a game player, but I'm now branching out into television and movies. So if you like that sort of content, please consider dropping my channel a like and subscribe. It really does help my channel to grow and get me still on the algorithm. I'm going to be hoping, if I can still keep my over 1,000 subscribers in a month's time, applying to the YouTube Partner Program. So if you do enjoy this, please consider subscribing because it really helps me stay above the 1,000 so I can so I can apply to the program in a month's time. But anyway, let's get this video started. And firstly, I want to apologise if I sound a bit croaky. I've got a bit of a a bit of a frog in my throat for some reason at the moment. But like I said, this is season 3, episode 6, called The Bounty of Star Trek Picard. Um and the episode kind of it as always, it gives you like a recap of like what happened in the previous episode with like Roe and what happened with that, and just a quick recap to kind of bring you up to date in case you've missed any of the episodes. But the main episode starts with one of the Titans like communication or distress buoys floating in space, and you see like I think it's the Excelsior and a couple of other ships warping in to the beacon, and there's no sign of the Titan. It's just literally just a floating beacon, and then it kind of like fades off as another beacon is floating around, and then Vadic's warship warps into that one. And then it turns out that they're dropping warning buoys and warping off, kind of like the Battlestar Galactica episode where they had to keep warping every like 13 minutes kind of thing. It kind of felt like that, where they're trying to like keep one step ahead and like drop buoy, warp off, drop buoy, warp off, so they can't get found. Um, and then we kind of like morph in onto Vadic's bridge, and she's like angry that she can't find any of the crew. She can't find the Titan or its crew, and she's getting more and more and more agitated as the beginning of the episode progresses, to the point where she's like she's swearing vengeance for her people and stuff like that, and gets one. And then when one of her crew speaks up that maybe this is the wrong thing they're doing and they need to find another way to do this, she gets another member of her crew to vaporize him. So it shows kind of like what feeling she's got towards her crew. So, but yeah, so that was like the kind of at the starting beginning of the episode. And then it kind of like it's as we start leaving Vadic's Vadic on the bridge, she is swearing vengeance, and she wants her crew to find anyone that Picard loves the dearest, or anyone that's associated with him. So she's going to start targeting anyone that Jean-Luc Picard knows to get closer to him. Then we go back to the Titan, and we come to Beverly and Picard in sickbay, where it's revealed what's wrong with Jack. Jack, in fact, has Irumodic syndrome, what Picard had before he passed away in the first episode, in the last episode of the first season, and become an android, kind of a golem, like a synthetic being. Um, so Jack has inherited the Irumodic syndrome from Picard. It was quite a nice scene in the sick bay. Actually, you could see like the sadness and the fear in Beverly and Picard as they were talking about it, knowing that Jack's gonna have to go through what Picard went through towards the end. Um, and they start like, um, well, Picard tries to like feel guilty, and Beverly's like, "Don't feel guilty for yourself. Feel guilty for Jack. He needs you now more than ever." So we kind of like go to the next scene where we see Jack like in the holographic 10 forward, where he's like drowning his sorrows in what seems to be bourbon. And Picard meets him in there, and they start like um Picard starts to confide in him about the Irumodic syndrome, and that he lived with it for decades, where Jack turns around to him and says, "How did you beat it?" And he goes, "I didn't." And then Jack realizes, because of the synthetic thing, you're an android now. Where Jack turns around quite funny and goes, "You haven't got one in my size, have you?" Which I found quite funny. That was quite a funny part of that. And then um it kind of like ends their conversation ends under a little bit of a cloud, I suppose. Not as much as it has been in the previous episodes, but Jack walks out of 10 forward, and Picard finishes his drink. And then we hear the sound of the transporter beam going on, and then we appear in the transporter room to see Raffi and Worf arrive on the Titan finally. They're now with the rest of the crew, and we get the wonderful classic Star Trek theme as they arrive in the transporter room, which was lovely to hear. Um, there's a bit of tension between Raffi and Seven. You can see things are quite strained between them, but it was quite nice where Beverly goes in to hug Worf, and you get Riker in the background going, Worf isn't a hugger," and she's like, "I don't care. It's been a long time." Where it has been. Apparently, they've not seen each other for 11 years. That's been a long time. Um, but it was a lovely scene just to see them back together again. Um, But yeah, the tension between Raffi and Seven, I think they may come back to that at some point. I think something's happened between them, which obviously happened in between seasons, and we don't know what's happened with them. But I think it was the first time she might have seen Seven in uniform as well, which is quite strange. But then we go to the ready room where, um, if you've seen like the teaser from last week, it's where they start talking about the heist, where they're gonna break into the Daystrom Institution to find out what was stolen. And then it was quite interesting where they was kind of like throwing back to what happened with Deep Space Nine, where they were talking about the Dominion War, and where Section 31 um, gave the changelings a virus which started to kill them off and make them sick and stuff like that. But then Picard reminds them, but we actually gave them the cure as well. I think that was the Odo part where Odo went into the link and cured them all. But I think this is what the vengeance is for. Vadik is getting revenge for what happened in Deep Space Nine. I think this is what this is all circling around. And we also find out as well that Frontier Day is only 48 hours away, so they need to get this done quick, because they assume, which I think we all assume now, there's going to be a massive attack during Frontier Day. Um, so yeah, they talk about what needs to be done. They need to go to Daystrom Station and find out what was stolen, but there is a problem. Daystrom Station, I can't. Daystrom Station is protected by a intense and lethal AI, um, which watches and learns their every move and is always one step ahead of them. But thankfully, they have that key thing they got from the last episode, which should help them in some way break into Data Institution, because they've only got an hour window to get what they need to get and get out because of the security systems and stuff. They have like patrols and whatnot on the station. So they've literally got an hour to do this. Um, so they decide what needs to be done, where they need to go and stuff to do this heist on Daystrom Station, and whereabouts on Daystrom Station they need to go. Um, so the scene in the ready room ends, and then you see. Sorry, can't catch my breath. I'm talking. Yeah. Then the Titan. Um, well, it's, you see the you see Daysum Station. Of it, it looks quite similar to Jupiter Station from Voyager, but it looks like it's got like the Midas arrays on either end, which was the arrays from Voyager that helped Starfleet communicate with Voyager as it got closer and closer to home. But we see Daystrom Station, but we move across to a moon, and the Titan warps in behind this moon to try and like avoid detection. But um, we'll get to it later. There's a they they get found, but they can't figure out how. But we'll get to that in a moment. But we get to the transporter room where they're getting ready to beam to the Daystrom Institute to begin this heist, and you have Raffi and Worf being prepared to go, and Seven turns up in the transporter room. Um, and then you get a kind of like funny quip from Worf, because he's thinking Seven's going to come with them, and he doesn't want like domestics on this heist with him. And then he realizes Seven's not coming. He's like, thank God, because things like this don't go well. But Riker arrives because obviously Riker's going to be going with them, and the banter between Riker and Worf this episode is spot on. It so reminds me of Next Generation and stuff. This episode's been absolutely fantastic. But yeah, the banter between them is absolutely brilliant. Where Worf reveals he's now a pacifist, and Riker, as they're beaming out, Riker's like, "Oh my god, we're all gonna die," because Worf doesn't fight anymore. But he does fight because we've seen it. He beheaded somebody. But as they beam on to the Daystrom Station, two Echelon class starships warp in. But they've got a special weapon on them where if they fire at the Titan and hit them, they can be traced no matter where they go. It's something to do with their weapon system. But um, the Titan communicates with Riker and says, "We need to get out of here. Um, we will be back. We'll come back for you." And they warp off to Antares Prime. I think I'm remembering the name right. Antares Prime. They say we're leaving for Antares Prime. We'll be back. You're on your own for an hour. So they warp off, obviously, to so they don't get attacked by these two starships that are chasing them. And as they're about to warp off, the ships start firing at them, but they leave just in time. But then we get back to Raffi, Worf, and Riker on board the Daystrom Station, where it's revealed this is where Section 31 keep all of their um, reclaimed tech and scraps, if as Riker calls them. But we see a few things here which I never thought we'd ever see again. Um, as they're walking through, they've got like these like hatches with like digital display screens to say what's inside them. We see the Genesis device from the Wrath of Khan. We see a Borg vinculum, and we also see a modified Tribble, which scares the life out of Worf, which is quite funny. But that modified Tribble looked terrifying. But the banter between Riker and Worf again, this part was brilliant, where Riker's like, "You don't bite back anymore," and it was just absolutely fantastic. But as they're walking through the station, you can see kind of like they're being watched, and then this whatever's watching them above the on the screen that's watching them, it says security systems activated. So they're being watched and they don't realize they're being watched. And then all of a sudden, really weird things start to happen, like holographic crows start flying around the station, and these really high pitched, erratic music tones start going off, like to the point they're shaking the station. Um, and then they turn a corner, and then all of a sudden, this really high pitched, like an F flat, I think Riker called it, tone come on, and then a holographic um, person materializes in front of them, and it's Professor Moriarty, the one we saw from the trailer. We knew he was coming in, but I think a lot of us knew it was going to be Daystrom Station. But um, yeah, so Professor Moriarty appears in front of them, points a gun, and says, "Hello, old friends," and then it kind of fades to black, and then we see the Titan arrive at Antares Prime, which is the home of the Fleet Museum. And you can see all the old ships docked around it. It looked absolutely fantastic. We'll come back to that in a second. As they arrive at the station, um, Captain Shaw's like, find one of the empty docking rings and hide us inside it. Where all of a sudden they're communicated with by the station to they answer the hail, and it's Geordie LaForge. He's the Commodore of the Fleet Museum. He's in charge of it all. Um, where he gives them such a stern look, like he's really not happy to see them at all. Um, and he kind of like says to Picard, "What are you doing here? You need to leave." To the point, Picard's like, "We need your help." And then you see Geordie and his daughter. I think it's Leandra. I couldn't remember her name very well. I think it's Leandra. Beam aboard the Titan, and you can see things between Geordie and Sydney, his other daughter, who's the helmsman of the Titans, a bit frosty, which we get to later on in the episode. But it was so nice to see all the crew back together again. Geordie's like, "I don't know whether to give you a Picard formal handshake or an old-fashioned hug," where Picard says, "Which one's it going to be?" And he goes in and hugs Beverly Crusher. It was just so nice to see them all back together again. It felt so wholesome. Um, so I'm not used to talking this much. Yeah, felt so wholesome to have them all back again. So they all gather in like the in the ready room again to talk about like what's going on and everything. Um, and Geordie reveals that he doesn't feel very safe having all these classic ships all in one place for Frontier Day. These this is literally this is literally Starfleet history surrounding one station. If anything happens, Starfleet's history is going to be gone. Um, Picard asks Geordie for his help, but Geordie is just not willing to help them at all. Not at all. Um, uh, Geordie explains to them, "Look, I I have a family to worry about, but it's not just that. And this is where they reveal that all the new ships in Starfleet now are integrated with one another, where they talk to each other all the time. This is how the Titan keeps being found by the Starfleet ships, because they're all linked, kind of like a Borg collective mind. They're all linked together. Um, so this is how they're constantly being found. And then it kind of like fades off, and then we get back to Daystrom Station, where Moriarty is shooting live rounds. I don't know how a hologram can shoot live rounds, but he's shooting live rounds at Raffi, Worf, and Riker. Um, and then the the erratic music notes start coming on again, to the point Moriarty's like, I'm hearing this sound all the time, I cannot get it out of my head. Where Riker's starting to twig, like all these different notes are making up a song, where as more and more of these notes start coming along, Riker's like, I know this song. And then you see a flashback to the episode of Farpoint episode, where Data and Riker are on the holodeck, and Data's trying to whistle a song, but he can never whistle properly. So Riker realizes this is what it is. So he finishes off the whistle, and then you see Moriarty smile because obviously Riker's solved the puzzle. Moriarty then dematerializes, the hologram disappears, and all the hatches start to open. And the main hatch they need to opens as well. And they walk in, and this is where they see um, Data. Well, we assume it's Data, but they walk in and see Data in a robotic kind of like workstation, like frozen in time, kind of thing, like deactivated. Um, yeah. And then they walk in, see um Data stood there, and they trigger some kind of like um log from Dr. Sung, yeah, the one from the planet from the first season, the one that gave his golem to Picard so Picard could survive. And this is where Sung like describes like, I gave my golem to Picard. I thought I would live forever and whatnot. But then I and then you realise what's happened. They have made whatever was left of Data, they've integrated with whatever was left of Law, B4, and all the memory engrams of Dr. Sung, and put them into this final golem, which is now Data, Law, B4, Sung, all in one. But it's not just the only thing. This golem, the Data golem, is the manifest they need to find at this station. So when they realise that, obviously dramatic music and stuff like that, and then we get back to the Titan where uh, Picard is still trying to convince Geordie to help him, but Geordie is having none of it. He's like, "My family comes first," etc., which is understandable, but you also kind of think Picard is his family too. Or yes, his daughters are his blood family, but Picard and the Enterprise crew are his family as well, and it was quite sad that you think he's not going to help them. Um, so we get back to the Titan Bridge, and you've got Seven and Jack sat on the bridge. Jack tries to sit in the captain's chair, and Seven's like off, and he's like, "I'm just trying it out. I'm just trying it out," which was quite funny. And then this was my favorite part of the episode. This made me this was absolutely amazing. Seven has a console in front of her where she can see all the ships that are docked at the museum. So she starts showing Jack some of them, and Jack knows them all, which is apart from one. The first ship we see is the USS Defiant, the Deep Space Nine ship. Um, and then we see the USS New Jersey. I've never seen this one, but it's a classic Constitution class from the original series. Then we see the USS Enterprise A, Kirk's Enterprise, and then finally we see the USS Voyager. She's also docked at this museum. It was so lovely to see that ship again. I never thought I'd see Voyager again. It was so lovely to see. And Seven talking about Voyager and the crew being her family, and um like how what Voyager done. They she traveled farther than any other ship at this fleet museum, and done so much and discovered so much, and that she was reborn on this ship and they were her family. It was although it was lovely to see the Voyager ship again, just the way Seven was talking was it was so sad because it kind of feels like she's lost her family. Like she doesn't. I don't think she sees anyone from. I think she still talks to the Admiral Janeway because she mentioned it at the beginning of season 3, where Picard and Janeway um helped her get back into Starfleet. But I don't think she sees any of the other crew, which is quite sad to hear. Um, but yes, it was lovely to see those ships. Oh, it was absolute. I've been dying. I knew we were going to see some ships at the museum, but I didn't realize how good we were going to see these ships. But we do see one more, which we'll get to. Sorry. Oh, yeah. The next ship we see, which is the final one, is the HMS Bounty, which is the bird of prey from Star Trek 4, the one that crashes into San Francisco Harbor. It's revealed that it was pulled from the San Francisco Bay, but it took years and years to find it because apparently the cloak had reactivated itself and they could never find it, which you see little things working in Jack's mind, how they might be able to facilitate this in their plan. So we go back to the ready room, and then Geordie is adamant he's not going to help them. So Picard walks back on the bridge, going, we're leaving. Geordie's not going to help. I do understand why, but then he turns to Sydney, LaForge's other daughter, the one who works on the Titan, and says, "But he wants to talk to you." So she goes into the ready room. They have quite a heated heart to heart, to the point where I think Geordie feels betrayed that she become a pilot rather than an engineer, um, and that he wants her to stay with him on the museum, to be safe. Where she's like, "This ship is my family." He goes, "No, we're your family," but she's like, "No, this ship is my family. You taught me that." Obviously, talking about his time on the Enterprise, and that the Enterprise crew were his family. She goes, "You taught me that. This crew is my family. I'm not leaving them. I am helping them with this, and there's nothing you can do to stop me." And I think that is what kind of like starts to sway Geordie a little bit. But as we think George is going to start swaying to help, something starts happening to the Titan. Like you can see, like the bridge starts to dematerialize and stuff, and like the ship starts to shake. Where then all of a sudden, the Titan cloaks, and Seven's on the bridge going, "Picard, we're cloaked," and he's like, not understand what the hell's going on. Where literally Geordie knows what's happened. Sydney and Jack have stolen the cloaking device from the HMS Bounty and installed it on the Titan. It starts to malfunction to the point where, um, if they don't fix it in the right way, it will completely cripple the Titan completely. They will never be able to use the ship again. Um, Geordie gets very, very angry about this, to the point where he thinks Picard was behind this, where obviously we know Picard wasn't. And then Geordie starts to realise that maybe Picard wasn't, and then he's like, "Jack and Sydney." He knew his daughter had something to do with this. Um, so we think that Geordie's just going to go back and just leave him to it, where the cloak starts to spark and explode in the engineering room, where Sydney's like, "I don't know what to do," where in the voice behind her goes, "I do, it's Geordie, he's come to help, he's going to help them do this." So they finally managed to get the cloak working on the fly, um, and we see the Titan walk back to Daystrom and cloak. It was so good to see a Starfleet ship cloak again. I don't think we've seen that since the Defiant. I know the Enterprise cloaked in an episode of Next Generation, um, uh, when they were in the asteroid searching for the Pegasus, I think it was. But no, I don't think we've seen a Starfleet ship cloak since the Defiant. But yeah, it cloaked. Um, but but obviously, because the ships are still linked, I still think they can see them. But this is when Seven reveals it doesn't matter what we do here, we still need to decloak to beam up Raffi, Worf, and Riker off of Daystrom. So you see we go back to Daystrom Station, and they're trying to deactivate Data so they can take him with him, because he knows what's been stolen from Daystrom because he is the manifest. So they need to take Data with them so they can find out what's happened. So as they're trying to deactivate him, they they start seeing on the screens there's an entire security team coming after them. They've got like 30 seconds to get this done, or they're going to be stuck there forever. So as they're deactivating him, you hear Picard hail them, go, "We're here. Um, be prepared to beam up." And they're like, um, "Beam up four of us." Obviously, because they've got to take Data with them as well. And as they're doing this, the security team start to break in. And Rafa's like, "We're out of time. We're not going to get out of here." And Riker's like, "Yes, you are." So he grabs a phaser and goes running off to try and protect them. Raffi, Worf, and Data manage to get off the ship, but sadly, Riker gets captured. He gets like a transport inhibitor shot into him, so he can't be beamed off the station. Um, we get back onto the Titan where they've Data, Worf, and Raffi have been back onto the Titan, um, and here they explain that Riker's been captured, but they've managed to rescue someone else. Worf steps aside, and LaForge sees Data for the first time in 20 years. It I could have cried a little bit at this scene. You could see in Geordie's eyes how much he's missed Data. It was just so weird to see. But um, they realize they need to try and reactivate Data to find out what's been missing. So they're taking to engineering, and Geordie really is the only one that knows how to get him working again. So they take him down to engineering, plug him all in like they used to do on the Enterprise with all the positronic cables and stuff. But it's when they realize that Data isn't just Data. Data has four personalities going on in his positronic brain, all talking at once at him. So they don't know once they activate him which one they're going to get. So they take the risk to reactivate him, and the first one that comes through is Data. He recognizes Geordie, Picard, um, and it was like they went back 20 years, like he'd never gone. It was beautiful. Um, yeah. So the first one they get through is Data, and Picard's like, "Do you know what was taken from Daystrom? Do you Can you tell us what was stolen?" But then he starts to. They think he's malfunctioning, but what it is, I think Data law before. I think it's a split personality thing going on because we start to see personalities start to change. He becomes Law and does that evil smirk and laugh, and then he changes into B4 quickly, and then shakes his head and becomes Sung. Um, and then right because like we need to know what was taken. Do you understand what we're saying? And then all of a sudden, these beams of light. Obviously, they're a holographic display. Um, display what was stolen from Daystrom Station. What was stolen was Picard's remains, his human remains. Obviously, when he died, he was put into a golem and he's now positronic. His human remains of what had been stolen. So whatever Vadik has planned with Picard's human remains, God only knows. But with 4 episodes left, so they're going to have to tie this up quick, I think. We go back to Daystrom Station, where Riker is being beaten to a pulp by four security four security officers in in Starfleet uniforms, um, where they're literally just punch him in the face trying to get information, and he's refusing to give up where they're going and the Titan's going, to the point the main security guy turns round, shoots the other three, and then you realize it's a changeling because the face starts to morph, and it's Vadik. Vadik has captured Riker. She takes Riker to her ship, where he's like, "There's nothing you can do which will make me give up where my friends and family are." to the point where Vadik goes, "Are you sure about that?" And she pushes a button, and then this force field drops. She has Deanna in in kind of like a brig, and she sees Riker, and she's like, literally, this is how the episode ends. She just goes, "Oh, Will," and that's how this episode ends. This episode was fantastic. Literally from start to finish, it was like a roller coaster. It was so good, this episode. I've got nothing but love for this episode. This entire season so far has been fantastic. If only the first two seasons were like this. It's like this is the final season and it's getting so good now. And it's like, and they're just going to end it like that. And I want more seasons like this. This is how Star Trek should be. Um, it's like I'm glad Discovery's ending. I've never really been a fan. I watch it obviously because I'm a Star Trek fan. I've never really been a fan of Discovery. I will watch it. I love Strange New Worlds because that's episodic like Star Trek used to be. But just revisiting the Picard era, the Next Generation era with the next gen ships and Seven. Oh, this has just been the best season so far. I've loved every minute of it. But this has been my review on season 3, episode 6 of Star Trek Picard, called The Bounty. I hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, this was my first ever review I've ever done. So if this didn't sound as good as all the other reviews you watch, I do apologize. It's just something I'm new at and I'm going to get better at. I just wanted to do something different I've never done before. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, please consider dropping my channel a like and subscribe. It really does help my channel to grow. Thank you for watching, everyone. And I'll probably see you next week for a review on episode 7. I don't know what the next episode is called yet, but I'll probably find out later on next week. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. Stay well, stay safe, live long and prosper. Goodbye.